Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm looking forward to the discussion for me this morning. I want to express a certain humility about how much I know, or I think how much any of us know about exactly how AI is going to affect the economy. There's a huge range of opinions, with some thinking that it will be enormously disruptive even in the next couple of years with widespread unemployment. And some people think it may turn out to be, if not a flop, at least it'll be much slower. The effects will be much slower than anticipated. So I think we're all trying to understand how this is going to impact the economy. And I hope my comments today are useful. Can we have the next slide, please? So this is just a preamble to say it runs through 2019. And I think, as everybody knows who has got an interest in productivity and economic growth, that productivity growth has been slowing down. It's slowed down dramatically in the euro area. It's slowed down dramatically in Japan. Even China has slowed down. It's still faster than Europe and the United States productivity growth, but it's slowed down quite a bit. India even has slowed down. So I think most countries are looking for something that will help to boost productivity. Although, as I mentioned, there is, of course, the fear that AI may actually act too rapidly. I don't think that's the case, but that's certainly a legitimate concern. Let's have the next slide. So obviously AI has been around for a long time, but starting around 2023, we got Gen AI, and Chat GPT came on the scene, and it had a huge impact. There were just millions of downloads, lots of people who are using it. I'm using it, my friends are using it, my colleagues are using it. And this was a huge sudden surge of interest in ChatGPT. I think the thing that made it so gripping was that it used natural language. So that whereas, for example, when PCs were first introduced, they were quite difficult to use. And it took up quite a while before they became sufficiently user-friendly that most people could use them, or they could be used in widespread ways in business. But ChatGPT at least had the promise that it could talk to you or you could talk to it. And we've seen really that surge in interest dating back from then, which is pretty recent. So it's only in the last 2-3 years that this has happened. And so we're still finding out the impacts that it's going to have. Can we have the next slide, please? So a high level of uncertainty, as I indicated. The United States is certainly spending billions and billions of dollars on developing AI. We're in a huge race among Google, Anthropic, Chat GPT, OpenAI, and so on. It may be that it's going to be very hard for these companies to actually recoup the billions that they've put into it. So it's possible that we will see, I think flop is probably the wrong word. I shouldn't have used flop, but it may not fulfill the kind of promise that it has, or that some companies may fall by the wayside. It may lead to very rapid change and high unemployment. My former colleague, Anton Karanek, who's now joined Anthropic, is a believer that we're going to get 30% unemployment within a few years, maybe even more. Or the optimistic outcome is that it will, over time, boost productivity and economic growth in the way that good technology has in the past. We had strong productivity growth in the years between World War I and World War II. We had strong productivity growth in the United States in the 1950s and 60s, or the continued into the 70s in Europe before things started to slow down. Okay, there is some fear that if AI doesn't work out the way it's hoped it will, then that might actually trigger a financial crisis because so much money is being pumped into it. A key point here is really the nature of the financing going into the AI. Now, since we don't exactly know what this new technology is going to do, we try to draw from history since that's the sort of main guide that we have. And economic historians and experts in technology say that a new technology, if it fits the definition of a general purpose technology or a GPT, it should have a major effect on the economy. And then there's a second wave. So it's possible, I think it's more than possible, it seems to be happening, that Gen AI can improve the productivity of research. That is called invention in the method of invention. That's an unfortunate phrase, really, that was used by Svidrilakas back in his study of hybrid corn in the 1950s. And it just means, is this something like the microscope, which really improves the productivity of research itself? Can I have the next slide, please? So the criteria that are generally used to determine if something's a general purpose technology, is it widely used? And the answer so far is maybe, somewhat. It's certainly, everyone's very excited about it, but the actual adoption is fairly slow for small companies. Most large companies sort of say, oh yes, we're using AI, although when you probe a little bit, it tends to be they're experimenting in it or they're using it for a particular function. So I think that it still remains to be seen how widespread the adoption is going to be on generative AI, although it looks promising so far. Is it generating a knock-on, sometimes referred to as knock-on innovation, innovation among the users? Yes, that seems to be happening. We're developing agentic AI. Those are actually taking AI and then applying it, and it can be applied in particular firms using data from the actual operations of the firm to try to make the operation of the AI more specific to the needs of the particular firm. Is there continued improvement in the technology itself? Well, I've been expecting to see a slowdown, and that's sort of maybe my bias, but we recently had the Stanford AI Index people talk at Brookings. So I think it was last week. And they were very clear, they're not seeing a plateau, that judging by the kind of tests that they apply, the things that the technology can do, they are seeing rapid improvement and continuing rapid improvement. So how quickly is this going to happen? Well, if it's anything like past history, it'll take quite a while. And so the question is Gen AI going to be different and faster? And certainly that's possible. The fact that it uses natural language and everybody can use it, it makes a big difference. On the other hand, certainly judging by what I've learned from my experience working with McKinsey, although I don't want to put words in their mouth, changing business processes is something that's slow. You have to do a lot of investment. You have to train workers. Managers may not know what to do or how to do it. So that takes a while. So the AI may be very dazzling, but to use it effectively in business, that's much harder. And is it improving the efficiency of research? Yes, I think that's probably happening more quickly. That researchers are really seeing things that they can do with AI that is allowing them, and of course, with previous versions of artificial intelligence, also it's not just Gen AI, and so that may help to boost the productivity of research. But the background here is that the productivity of research has been slowing down. A number of papers, Nick Bloom, John Van Reenen, pointing out that it takes more and more people to run a research lab. It takes more and more money, so that research has been getting much more expensive for the return that you get. So AI may help to offset that. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see a massive increase in the rate of technological progress. The next slide, please. So I've got a few slides of numbers here just to illustrate some of the points that I've just said. So the Census Bureau in the United States reports on a survey of a large number of businesses. It skews towards small business, but you can see that there's been a substantial rise in the number of those companies or businesses that are using AI, up from 4%, 5%, 10%. Now, they decided to change the nature of the questions they asked in their most recent question in November 2025. And that's jumped up now to 17.3%. But keep in mind, that's a different question they're asking now. So rather than asking, are you adopting AI? It's now asking, are you using it in any business function? And so that's seen the increase. So this is not a continuous series. Now, some of the other surveys, McKinsey's done a survey, Stanford University, Boston Consulting, and they do find, with more of an emphasis on large firms, that they are at least experimenting and in some cases using AI in certain business functions. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide showing the number of new business applications. So one of the reasons that has been concern for whether the United States economy has been losing its dynamism, and John Halterwanger, a former colleague at Maryland, is one of the experts here, and one of his signs of maybe losing dynamism was that the rate of new business applications is relatively low. Now, this chart shows that there was a huge jump up in the number of new business applications that coincided with the COVID. And it also coincided, of course, with the growth of online retailing, Amazon, and so on. So we've had a huge surge in very small companies that are selling you. So I go on to Amazon and I order some obscure product that I can't find in the store, and somebody somewhere mails it to me and makes a profit. So there was a lot of that that was boosted by COVID. However, since 2025, we're seeing actually a big increase in the number of AI businesses. And again, John Halterwanger is my source on this. So the businesses that are starting now, so that extra jump that's happened in 25, a lot of that is coming from AI-related businesses. Now, just to be cautious, we don't know what they're doing and whether they're really effective, or whether these are just people who are saying, okay, I'm going to make some money by telling other people how to use AI. So it remains to be seen, but at least this is a promising sign, if you're in favor of AI adoption, that the number of new businesses has increased sharply. Let's get the next slide. Is productivity growth any faster? Well, the cautious answer is yes. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics here in the United States reported that productivity growth, that's output per hour in the non-farm business sector of the US economy, so it excludes governments, excludes nonprofits, that has been running at about 1.5% a year since 2004. That's not zero. That's better than some countries, but it's much slower than in some earlier periods in the 1990s or even in the 50s and 60s. And that has pushed up a bit. So we've actually seen 2% growth since 2019. However, as you can see from this chart, COVID kind of got in there and messed with the productivity numbers. So it's a little hard to say for sure that we really have a new trend of 2%. And of course, it's still early days for AI to be having much effect. So I think this figure on productivity is modestly optimistic that maybe AI is beginning to have an effect, but it's certainly not absolutely clear that AI is really driving a significant increase in productivity. Also, it's worth keeping in mind that something has got to, that 1.5% we were getting from 2004 to 2019, that's coming from somewhere. So we don't know that AI will actually push the growth rate that much higher, or maybe that'll just be where we get the 1.5 to 2% going forward. So I think the jury is still out. We don't know yet if we're going to get 1.5%, 2%, 3%, or in some people's view, 6%. I'm thinking that we might get something in the order of 2 to 3%, but it's a bit of a guess at the moment so far. We don't know. The next slide, please. So one of the questions I was asked to look at in this, and I realize I'm running out of time here. One of the questions that I was asked to look at is AI going to cause a financial crisis? And I think the answer to that, so I had a couple of pieces with my colleague Lenny Mendonça in Project Syndicate, and our view is no. Again, we don't know for certain, but this looks more like what happened in 2001 than what happened in 2008-9. It doesn't look like something that's going to bring the banking system down. The borrowing, there is some borrowing, and there's a lot of money being provided out of retained earnings. And most of the companies that are putting these huge amounts of money up are big companies that are making a lot of money. So Google's not going to go broke. Amazon's not going to go broke. Microsoft's not going to go broke. Meta, Nvidia, they're not going to go broke. And there are a couple of others that I haven't got on the list here. And they've got huge cash flows. They're putting quite a lot of it into developing AI, and they're also borrowing money. But if they find that they're not getting the returns, that will affect their stock prices, their equity prices, and you might see a collapse in the NASDAQ, just like we saw in 2001. And that could lead to a recession. It could lead to a global downturn, but probably not going to lead to something like the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Just as a word of warning, though, the current administration is pushing very hard to ease financial restrictions, financial regulation. Now, there's better and worse financial regulation. We want to get it right, but we certainly don't want to ease it too much. There is some borrowing, private credit borrowing, that is beginning to show some signs of stress. So I think we need careful supervision. We need good financial regulation to make sure we don't get into trouble on this. The next slide, please. So finally, I'll just say, and I think we're going to have more discussion of this, so I will make this very short. Probably the big problem here is even if AI takes some years before it has a big effect, and I think it is going to affect the economy. I don't think this is just nothing. I think it is a major new technology. It may take quite a long time, but adapting to that new technology may be difficult. And the United States is not necessarily all that good at that, particularly for people without college degrees. And, you know, we've got to train the teachers before we can train the workers. And the US is pretty bad at that. So we need to learn from other countries. We need to provide more money for training. Workers themselves don't like training and retraining. They want to keep their old job. They don't want to train for a new job. This is a real challenge, I think, for the US, even if that AI comes in more slowly than some of the optimists or some of the fearmongers say. It still could be quite stressful, and we need to really make an effort that we're providing the skills not only to the upper income people, the people with college degrees, but also to the regular workers, many of whom will have to adapt, learn new skills, or find new jobs. Could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, that was the end of my presentation. I just have some papers. There's obviously some repetition in the first three of those. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation.